The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. We're here for another episode of the Geeks Geezers and Googlization show. I'm your host, Ira Wolf. Not here, but on the line is my co-host, Keith Compagna. And again, our sponsors are JobFight and Success Performance Solutions. If there's any listeners out there having people problems, relating to recruiting, retaining people, managing people, engaging employees, that's what we're going to be talking about today. We'll be talking about all those things with a good friend and colleague of mine, HR Strategist Ed Krow. Let's start with putting today's conversation. Now, it's actually every conversation we have, I think, for the last few months. Topics we discuss each and every week on Geeks Geezers and Googlization. Let's put it in perspective. I put this quote out. I read this the other day, and I put it out and got. I think I've got like 2,000 views already on it. So obviously hit home. It's from Hal Varian. Hal is the chief economist at Google. His quote is, 1 billion years ago, modern Homo sapiens emerged. 1 billion minutes ago, Christianity began. 1 billion seconds ago, the first IBM PC was released. And 1 billion searches ago was this morning. What's crazy about that is that was in 2013. And at least Google, obviously it's now more than 1 billion hours and 1 billion minutes, but Google traffic's like even higher than that. I think last year they had 7.5 billion searches. But one other stat, and we talked about this just a few weeks ago with Jeff Gotthelf from, he wrote Sense and Respond, that Amazon updates its software every 11.6 seconds. In order to create the best possible user experience. That just blows everybody away. So I guess the question for everybody today is, when was the last time HR updated or revamped its recruitment process or application process? For some, it may be, it's definitely not, I won't say 1 billion seconds ago, but it's a while. I'm not, we're not talking about just putting it online, changing ATS, looking at the whole user experience, standing in the shoes of a candidate. So we had a lot to talk about today, about people management. So hey, so Keith, I've kind of overlooked you there. You're not even you're where? Where's Keith today? I'm out.
Right, I'm out in Las Vegas today with the Transform HR show, and it really speaks to everything that our guest Ed Krow and everyone else has been speaking to. Ira, I mean, it's amazing the impact of technology has thoroughly exposed the need for the human component of human resources to shine through. And it's a blessing and a curse because, as Ed will certainly contribute to, not a lot of HR teams are ready for this. And I think it's going to be the quick and nimble, the ones ready to make a risk that will come, they'll make a run for a career here. And what's going to happen in a billion seconds from now, right? As it relates to what HR leaders today are doing for their own personal careers and the people they work for. It's pretty exciting times here.
Yeah, I mean, I on Monday, I gave a presentation to a payroll company, an HR software company, really. And, in there I started to talk a little bit about Google. I didn't have this quote at the time, but I was talking about Google and Google for Jobs and Google Hire, how it disrupted, with Indeed, that Indeed's jobs aren't focused on it. And here's a group in the HR software business that wasn't even aware of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's
so
crazy.
There's just a big disconnect. So by the way, if anybody has any questions today, we are recording live, so you can call us at 561-623-9429. That's 561-623-9421 or 9429. So if you have got any questions about people or the speed of change, and everything. But again, that Amazon stat is just crazy. And then you think about how slow HR has been to adapt, especially on the user experience side, on the candidate experience. I mean, user experience from the HR perspective is probably improving, but on the flip side of that, it's even from the employee usage, it's not very good. So we can get into some of those things. Have you met? So you're at a Transform HR. I think wasn't that where Enrique Rubio from Hacking HR? He was our guest of. Was it just last week?
I haven't seen him yet.
2 weeks
I haven't
ago,
caught up with him yet. I'll be finding him.
I talked to him last week about trying to get the Hacking HR up in Lehigh Valley, and so he's considering it. He's going to put it together, and hopefully we can get something in our neck of the woods here.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
So anything else new and exciting? You were in Costa Rica over the weekend?
Yeah, I just took a couple days off and visited a friend's house out in the middle of the jungle out there. I unplugged with all of the Googlization going on. I was able to unplug in the middle of the Central American jungle for a few days, and I highly recommend everybody try to do that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm actually hoping to do that in May. So we're getting going away.
Nice.
So
that's what we should start doing. We should have unplugging camps.
Yeah.
We'll see. We probably go out of business in 3 days, but
for sure.
No, I mean, all things considered equal, the vibe that I've gotten from speaking with people earlier this morning from Transform HR is that these people here are, I would consider, at least at a minimum, aware of the tsunami that's coming, the tsunami of change that's coming, and it's wild to see that they here in the Pacific time zone they are aligned almost as much as the people on the East Coast in terms of what needs to be done first, right? And we talk about technology and data, and I find that most people realize that they need to get their data under control. And like Enrique said, it's not going to be easy to do because they simply aren't sure what the first thing to do is, and they've got all the tasks to manage in the meantime. I will share this with you. I had that pleasure of speaking at the Rutgers University panel.
Oh yeah,
it seems like every time I'm on the show, yeah. I keep forgetting about it. But it was fantastic. There were close to 65, 70 people in the room. A whole lot of good questions. The panelists I was on, including myself and one gentleman who came from Johnson & Johnson in the acquisition merger component of HR, and really, really fascinating. Former lawyer, very, we'll call it conservative approach to what's going on and the challenges there. And on the right of me was someone who's been working in HR for maybe 3 decades and has a very passionate traditionalist perspective on the value of people. So it was fantastic to be in the middle of the two with my what I was accused of being progressive in my HR concepts. But it was a fantastic time, really good time, a lot of fun, a lot of good stories shared.
So yeah, no, absolutely. And I know if anybody wants to read a little bit more about it, I think you put some of that up on your LinkedIn. I think that was on your feed.
I got a whole bunch of. I got a bunch of recommendations that came from that, which I thought was super nice.
Yeah. So outstanding. So I think we're kind of leading up to this, and to bring it on Ed, especially about strategy, and obviously that's a HR strategy, and that's huge. But on the way down to this meeting that I was at on Monday, I happened to listen to a podcast. I want to tune out on. Well, I wasn't disconnected, but I was tuning out all the news and everything around me. And I started to read about, data and analytics, and there was, and this just blew me away. And again, I put it in perspective of how far HR tends to fall behind. Currently, Amazon's model is shop and ship. So people shop and then they ship. So, and a lot of people are on Prime and they get overnight, or if you're living in the city, you might even get it the same day. Their ultimate model will flip to ship then shop. And by that I mean is their algorithm is getting so good, so predictive, that when they make those recommendations for an item, it's currently it's about 5 or 10%. When it reaches, I don't know what the number is, they didn't share it, but when they have a patent on this, when it reaches, let's say 50%, and they know that if they ship it, that the person won't return it, basically just by doing a search, the next day you may end up with that product on your doorstep. And with a high reliability, they know you'll buy it, you'll keep it, you won't return it. And the only reason they're not doing it right now is because that predictive algorithm isn't quite good enough that they'll make money. But when they know they'll get less returns than they ship, it's coming to your doorstep. So take that to, and again, I say, okay, scary. How does this apply to HR? Because everybody's still running on gut. So that's why I was really excited about having Ed join us today, because Ed and I have had this conversation for 20 years, and he, unlike you or me, came from HR. He grew up with it and has evolved over the last 20 years. We were right before the show. We were talking about how long have we known one another, and it's almost 20 years that he and I have worked together. Ed's kind of official bio as he works with executives and business owners who are struggling with people problems, such as adapting to changing conditions. I think we have a few of those going on with customers, investors, community expectations. He turns irrelevant and ineffective HR functions into strategic contributors by aligning HR with business objectives. So, Ed, welcome to Geeks Geezers and Googlization.
Hey guys, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you got the heads up where our show was, where our heads are. I mean, you've known me for a while, and I think you and I met when I was first talking about the perfect labor storm, which which we're well entrenched in. Now that's almost old hat. Let's talk about the HR strategy. I mean, what's you're literally on the front lines of this. I mean, Keith and I are more focused on the recruitment and software side. What's the buzz? I mean, why are the CEOs and the CHROs and directors of HR calling you?
Well, it's an interesting problem, and I think that it has one kind of simple answer to it. A CEO that I'm currently working with heard me speak and said, I hadn't said thank you for attending the talk, and he was right up, and he said, Ed, you and I have to talk. And I said, great, and we went off to a corner there and started chatting, and he said, HR makes my life difficult. I don't want my life to be any more difficult than it is. And I said, okay, well, I think I can help with that. Let's talk further once we both get back home. And what I come to find out is that he's trying to run his business. He has a great C-suite around him. This is a professional services type firm. The owners are active in the business. And he has an HR function that is very robust in terms of numbers of people. It's an 8-person function for an 800-employee organization. And he says, Ed, they throw up roadblocks everywhere I turn. They can't hire fast enough. We don't retain the best and the brightest. We can't keep our people trained. I mean, everywhere he looks, he's handcuffed by what's going on or not with his HR function. And sadly enough, that one story is not an anomaly.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. So where do you start? I mean, how do you make a change? I mean, what, other than we agree with him that that's a problem, and how do we turn it around? Because again, I started this business in 1996. I didn't necessarily know it was going to evolve, more into the HR world. But so for 25 years, at that point, I was introduced front cover of probably HR magazine and every other, I'm not sure there were blogs at the time, but articles and Workforce magazine. Everybody talked about HR getting a seat at the table. That's what we're still talking about. HR getting a seat at and I sort of changed that. I said, getting a seat at the table is too late. You need a voice at the table. And maybe they have the voice. Yeah, maybe they have the voice, but obviously they're not listening to what the CEO's saying or the CFO or the COO. I guess what do you do to make that, to start making that happen differently?
Well, to your point, yes. As I circulate through the HR circles, I find folks that will say, and I will censor this quote, but I had an HR director say to me, Ed, I go into the board meetings and I report on turnover and retention and training statistics. And you know what? They sit there and stare at me. They don't give a blank. And I looked at this HR director and I said, okay, but here's why they don't care. And I'm not surprised they don't care. Because you're not relating anything back to the business. You're not showing that these things that you believe are important are impacting their business. You're not making the connection for them. So they've given you this time at the board meeting, which is more than a lot of HR folks get, but you're not communicating in such a way as to grab their attention and say, look, folks, here's the problem, here's the fix, and here's where I need your help. You're going in and reporting numbers and you're leaving. And actually that's what happens. She gets her 15 minutes and she leaves. So, to even say that she has a seat at the table is not accurate. And I hear this.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to compliment that, Ed, because I saw one of your videos. I am a fellow Generation Xer, and I always maintain that we're the middle children of the boomers, and and I always wonder, like, what's the big deal? Why is everybody in such of an uproar here, right? And when I totally envision that scenario of the HR person providing no business value to the board of directors. And then, but I think it's deeper, I'm sure you'll agree, it's deeper than that, because once that HR person goes back to their office, they're basically, they may very well be left without any wind behind them in their sales, because they're defeated in terms of, how am I supposed to make the impression that maybe they're not trained, they're not, cultivated across many industries to gain that business acumen to connect the dots. I'm curious what it is that you see come that, what's the thing that, individuals like yourself bring to the board of directors that maybe is can help the HR leaders more so than make them feel less qualified to get the job done? Sure.
Well, I think personally, one of the things that I'm very fortunate to have is a bit of an operations background. So prior to my professional HR life, I was in operations. And so I got to experience life being served by HR. And here are the people that are getting hired and trained, and are they what I need to hit my performance numbers, to hit the goals that we have for customer service and so on. And so I got to experience that for a number of years before then moving into HR. So it's given me a unique perspective on, okay, wait a minute here. This is not, HR is not about making people happy. And it drives me bonkers when I talk to HR people and they say that that's their goal. And I say, well, what else? Oh, well, to keep us from getting sued. No, please, no.
Right.
Neither of those things are driving business value. And I think that the challenge is that your average HR person doesn't come out of school with an HR degree, which is not a problem. I mean, I didn't. But it's where they come out of. And if they come out of school with a degree knowing that they want to get into HR, what are they really being taught about true business? And I think that carries over to when I talk to various HR associations and I ask them, what are the most attended sessions that you have? And across the board, by far, they say, oh, anytime we have a legal update, we fill the house.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I just want to weep. Not because legal compliance isn't important, but that is just such a small fraction of what it really means to be an HR professional. And yet that's what gets our attention. And so, when I think about it from what does HR need, HR needs to take some time for itself to develop itself into a business partner, which means getting outside of perhaps even SHRM-related events where all the content is HR-related, going to true business acumen types of events and seminars. Maybe you go learn how to sell, because after all, if you're going to the board, you better be able to sell your idea. Maybe you need to go take that class on basic business finance so you can talk in terms of dollars and cents. But we've got to break the mold of an HR person thinking, I'm a specialist in HR, I know everything about HR, and therefore I'm best suited for this role. Well, that's great if you're an HR generalist, and maybe even okay if you're an HR manager, but you want to climb higher than that, it's not going to happen with the average business.
What you're talking about, I mean, there's a million ideas going through my head about what should the competencies be, for somebody considering HR. I spoke to the student SHRM chapter last week, and somebody said, what should we study? What skills do we need? And and some of them were in HR. They're going to come out with an HR degree. So it essentially came. What are some of the competencies or skills that they might need? But beyond that, you mentioned something, and I can't remember. I'm just drawing a blank on what he called it. I actually wrote about it in my book, Recruiting in the Age of Googlization. But it was from Jeff Hoffman, and Jeff Hoffman was one of the co-founders of. Not Paychex. What was the transportation or the hospitality company where you'd buy airline tickets and hotel?
Priceline?
Yeah, Priceline. Okay, yeah. So he was one of the co-founders, and he said, what his habit was, every morning he woke up and he read something, something about an industry magazine or something else that had nothing to do with what his business was. And, the example that always stuck in my mind, and I heard this before, was, like people in banking studied banking, why would they read what was going on in the fast food industry? Well, the fast food industry, like McDonald's, started drive-thrus. And, somebody that was smart in the banking industry said, well, why don't we have a drive-thru? And, so is what ideas exist in other industries that initiate change, or was the catalyst for change that is transferable, and then how do you disrupt your business model to fit that? And that's every industry is in a world of disruption. So, but with that, what do you feel are some of the competencies, beyond saying, you should take a business course, in HR? What are some of the other areas that you would that you would recommend somebody in the field? Or as you said, talking about conferences, what other vertical channels should they be offering?
Well, I'll tell you, the first one that comes to mind, it's really honestly a shame that it comes to mind, and maybe you'll laugh, but it's communication.
Oh, yeah.
I am amazed at the inability of the average HR person to communicate ideas effectively and be persuasive with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we all know that when it comes to leadership at any level, whether that be leadership in title or just leadership in being a peer that's respected, it comes back to your ability to influence others. And I don't know that the average HR person has that skill set. In fact, I was just interviewing a CEO the other day for my upcoming book that doesn't have a title yet, but he said, Ed, I had an opening for an HR manager. I brought someone over from marketing because I wanted a good communicator in that role, and I knew they could go out and learn all the HR basics. But learning how to communicate effectively is an innate trait, and I wanted that skill set in my HR function. Brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant concept. Exactly. It's almost like allowing disruption within to occur. Integration, right? Like, let's pull from one place. Mm-hmm. So we saw it 10, 15 years ago where business industries, healthcare was looking over its supply chain and going, what are you guys doing over there to integrate all your different pieces? And then you started to see, the electric or electronic health records start to come into play, right? Because people started integrating more. That wasn't inherently in a healthcare related concept, but it's what elevated their ability to service their patients' care. And by the way, Ed, I know that this is the first time on the show, but Ira and I are completely okay if you name your book "My Time on the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show."
what I learned from my time.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, just a reminder, you are listening to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show. Our guest today is Ed Krow, who is an HR strategist and a good friend and colleague of mine for almost 2 decades. We are talking about the future of HR and what it's going to take for them to get a voice at the table beyond the seat at the table. They've been trying for a long time. We are headed to a short break. We'll hear from our sponsors, JobVite and Success Performance Solutions. You can stay right where you are. We will be back in 2 minutes.
Behind everything you're searching for is something you're actually looking for. When you search with the real Yellow Pages, you get more than a contractor. You get a whole new curb appeal. It's not just getting directions to a dry cleaner with YP.com. It's rescuing an old favorite from the back of the closet. And it's more than finding a locksmith with YP.com on your mobile. It's getting to sleep in your own bed. Whatever it might be, there are more ways to search and more ways to find exactly what you're looking for with the real Yellow Pages, YP.com, and YP.com on your mobile, only from AT&T.
What's up, everyone? This is Keith from the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show, powered by JobVite. JobVite knows career paths are made by people, not by open job requisitions. JobVite's platform ties recruitment marketing directly to applicant tracking and onboarding, creating continuous candidate engagement that effectively connects recruiters with qualified passive candidates. Used by over 50,000 recruiters placing over 1 million jobs, JobVite's platform impacts every company in every industry. Check us out at jobvite.com.
Listen carefully. Up to 9 out of 10 job candidates visiting your company career page leave before completing an application. You heard that right. 90% of candidates who want to apply for a job at your company don't. That's just plain crazy, especially in today's tight labor market. Candidate experience matters. Stop turning candidates away. Let Success Performance Solutions help. Call us at 800-803-4303 or register at successperformancesolutions.com/W4CY. Schedule a no-obligation consultation and get special access to insider tips to recruit faster and hire smarter.
Hey, welcome back to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show. I'm your host, Ira Wolf. I'm with Keith Compagna, my co-host today, and our special guest, Ed Krow. Hey, when we left off, Ed, we were talking about the communication. We were talking about a little of that over the break as well. And, you know, one of the things that comes up continually, and this isn't just HR, this is everyone. This is moving toward that world of predictive analytics or specific to HR people analytics, is it's not the data. You know, going back to the example you gave earlier about the director of HR, whoever it was, you know, coming into the boardroom, presenting the reports, you know, showing the slides, pie charts, graphs, and leaving. just reporting the data.
Mm-hmm.
There might have been really, really valuable data in there if a story was told. And when we say story, we don't mean making it up. This isn't fiction. This is how does it relate to the business? I mean, I've you get around. I mean, you're doing a lot of conferences. I have to check. I'm going to be at SHRM Talent in 2 weeks, and then SHRM, be in New York City, SHRM. I don't know if there's any storytelling sessions,
I'm
in
sure
there.
There's not.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's not. And
Not enough,
I think
right?
that comes, right. And I think that comes back, as you said, to how we communicate. And if you've listened to a really good speaker, to your point, Ira, what makes them good is that they're entertaining, but within that entertainment is the message.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like too often in HR, and not to pick just on HR, where a lot of professional folks don't understand that whether you're presenting at a conference to thousands or to a boardroom of 10, that the way the information presented means more than the information itself. And so if we can't talk in terms of that story, weaving in some history behind the numbers, or painting the picture of what the future might look like if we can impact these numbers, then we can't possibly expect the folks to whom we're speaking to sit there and really get the depth of the message that we're trying to convey. And all
What
the
is that
great
message?
public speakers do that so well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we don't have to be great true public speakers earning, six figures from gigs to get really good at doing that in the boardroom.
What is the message that you think? Who needs to hear what message first, Ed? Put it out there.
I think HR as a profession needs to wake up. I think those are brutal words, but I too often run into people that tell me they got into HR because they want to make people happy. They have a helping nature, so they got into HR. They were in social work, so they thought that HR was the next best thing. They started out in psychology and thought they could use that in HR. And so that's part of the problem is that there is this, what's the word I'm looking for? This thought that HR is where the nice people go. The problem is we know that's not true because all you have to do is turn on your favorite TV show that's about business, and you're going to see the poor schmuck they've got playing the HR person.
Right.
That nobody likes.
Right.
Toby from The Office, classic example, right? And so there is a disconnect between what the HR profession, how it sees itself, and how everybody else perceives HR.
And they're so beat down. And this isn't a knock on HR. I mean, I'll speak on behalf of everyone on the phone, on the podcast here. I mean, we admire the work that gets done, and it is, in my humble opinion, the tipping point for any organization of any size in any industry within the next 5 years. And I say 5 years because it's my belief from the technology side that the companies that do take advantage of implementing technology, they are going to exponentially lift their skill sets and their ability to scale, and the effectiveness of their game plans will make it really hard for any HR person outside of 5-10 years at the most to catch up.
So let me throw this out to you. So the other day, again, speaking to a HR software company, primarily payroll, benefits, compliance, and that's important. Obviously, you need those things. But as I started to relate what I heard in that shop and ship, to go to ship and shop, they were saying that everybody should be in the prediction business. I mean, and I mean, people who will succeed will recognize that they're in the prediction business. So here you have a company that collects. I mean, that's all payroll and benefits and onboarding and HR is. I mean, it's a data collection monster. So, they have more pieces of data than anybody else. But within that data lies the solutions for the company. It's not only how much turnover did we have, but what can we do to predict the turnover, and what are the factors that might relate to that? I can't even get an answer, and I know both of you have heard me say this. Keith, probably more than you, Ed. You might have seen it on my on the LinkedIn stuff. I continually say, somebody says, "How do we find people?" And I go, "Well, how many people apply but don't finish your application?" They don't know about that. How many people see it? When do they leave? Do they leave at the beginning or during or the end of your application? Do they leave because it's not mobile friendly? Beyond that, let's say you have a 90% completion rate. Is that helping you? Or are 99% of the 90% who complete it not qualified? To me, these are pretty superficial questions, and yet they don't have the answer, to those. So, that critical mind, that little bit of critical thinking. But beyond that, I mean, where companies are moving is really to this prediction business of being able to identify people of when they would, when they might leave. But going into an area I know you get into with like compensation, pay equity, gender equity, how much of an increase will increase or decrease, a lack, I guess, well, even too much or not enough of a pay increase. How does that impact churn, engagement, satisfaction, production, performance? Right now, it's let's try this and see if it works, where the best companies, driven by HR, are starting to identify if we do an 8% increase, it will allow this to happen. If we do a 3% increase, that this will happen. If we do a 12%, this will happen. Or if we increase the premium, they have to copay or decrease it. They're getting to the point where they know these things ahead of it, and that does directly impact the bottom line or performance or the ability to produce. How far away are we? I mean, am I just talking to the wrong people? Or is do I need to find a better group of surround myself with a different group of people, or is it that or am I is it real?
No, it's there was a study done. Actually, it was a compilation of studies on what percent change in pay gets someone to act differently. That if you're just looking at pay alone, what's the percentage that you have to change someone's pay to get them to change their behavior? It's 7%.
Stop it.
The average
7%?
company isn't 7. Yes. The average company is not handing out 7% pay raises. Okay, and mainly because they can't afford to do it, and I get that. But here's the problem. So I like to keep things. I'm a simple guy. I like to keep things simple. When that candidate comes in the door and we interview them, they seem to like us. We seem to like them. So we shake hands and we say, "Okay, candidate, we're willing to give you this package," and we put out the pay and the benefits and all the frills. We lay it on the table. So we're willing to give you this package in return for your time, your talent, and business results. And they say, "I think that's a fair swap." We shake hands. Off we go on this new coworker horizon. And then the first year they knock it out of the park, and we're patting ourselves in the back. We're saying, "Yeah, we nailed that hire. They're awesome. Thanks for your hard work. Here's 2%." And that may be okay the first year, maybe even the second year. But after a while, your superstars are going to look at that and say, "Well, wait a minute. You keep stretching my goals and stretching my goals, and you're handing me peanuts in return." And HR has to really take a look at the paradigm of how we reward our people. I am so disheartened at the number of organizations out there today that still have no link between the results their employees drive and the level of pay they receive. And what I hear routinely is, well, Ed, we like to be fair, and fair is giving everyone the same percentage increase. And I look at those, and sometimes this is business owners saying this to me, and I look at them and say, that's not fair, because everyone's still not getting the same increase unless everybody here is earning exactly the same level of pay, and all you're doing is rewarding mediocrity.
Right.
So if we really, if HR really wants that voice at the table, those are the kinds of challenging discussions they have to be willing to have with the C-suite and ownership of their companies to say, the way we've always done it is not working now, and it sure as heck is not going to work in another 5 to 10 years.
So, I mean, going back,
to think differently.
I mean, so a couple minutes ago we were talking about one of the, right off the top of the head, you said you're embarrassed to even mention this, that communication is a core skill. So, but beyond that, I mean, do you see HR even having this ability to think of these questions? So as you're doing it, I mean, my mind goes that way, and I think everybody on this call is, I'm thinking, so the 7% increase, well, we can only afford 6, but that doesn't just mean that it's a 1/7, we're going to see a 1/7 increase in turnover or a drop in performance, because it may be much more significant than that. I mean, that it is, so there's a whole lot of other effects. But I don't see people asking me those questions. It's more like, well, what should turnover be? What's a good rate for that? Right?
Yep. I get that all the time. I'll hear, well, our turnover is 5% compared to the industry average, which is 10%. And I remember one time hearing someone say those exact words, and I looked at them and said, who cares? The closest person in your industry is 100 miles from here. Yeah. So let's not worry about what the industry average is.
Right.
How about turnover as it relates to who you're losing?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
who are you losing? Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If it's your worst performers, I'll open the door for them to walk out.
Yeah. So
but if it's our top performers, we've got a problem.
So I'll tell you.
Again,
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I think that, and if you can hear the frustration in my voice, it's because I don't consider myself anyone special, and yet I'm thinking of these things. Why isn't the rest of the HR profession thinking these things?
Well, I have an answer. I think I have an answer to that, Ed, because I've been chewing on that for the better part of a decade. Because I am one of those people that can't imagine I'm the smart person. It's just not in my DNA. The reality is, maybe it's the audience isn't HR. Maybe the audience is that C-suite. Maybe the audience is the board of directors. How do they get? I'm coming from, I guess my inner sales guy here is coming out here, but what is it? How do you get that message to the C-level and the board of directors? Because HR doesn't seem to be grasping it very quickly. Right. And we all agree there's an urgency element here.
And I'll take you back to the story I told earlier about the CEO who grabbed me after a speaking session. So I ended up working with that organization. And as part of my deep dive into what was going on in there, I sat down with every member of the C-suite. And I was blown away at the level of thought that the average person in the C-suite thought that HR was doing okay for this organization. And so I'm sitting there with chief finance, chief marketing, it was a medical organization, chief nursing officer, chief IT officer, and saying, okay, but what's HR doing for you? Well, and then they'd stop and they'd hesitate. I'd say, there's the problem. If you don't know what HR is doing for you to make your life easier, then how can you sit here and tell me that they're doing a good job? And each one of the people said, well, we really don't hear complaints from our people about it. I said, but that's not an indicator that they're doing the job for you. And so we sat there and had a talk about what a good HR function would look like and how it would impact their individual departments. And you could see the light bulbs going off.
Right.
And so I think there's there are such low expectations sometimes that, well, we're not hearing complaints, so everything must be okay around here.
So do you think that attributes to
much more?
Do you think, Ed, that has a lot to do or anything to do with the idea that a CFO is looking at a whole lot of spreadsheets, a CEO is looking at maybe investments and all the different C levels? They're simply not putting attention to this. It's almost like the quiet movement of failed, because to me, and I guess to tie a bow around it, right, there's the idea that there aren't going to be people to support this lack of progressive HR movement, right? So like there's simply, if you can't get more efficient and more effective, there aren't going to be the extra bodies to throw at the problem. So something traumatic could happen to the business, right? That's where you're going with all this, right? So maybe the C levels just don't get the time. So how do we get them to see it?
So, and I just want to chime in here because we're actually about 5 minutes
away.
We're
at the end of the podcast.
Yeah. So, but I think that was a good segue. So, Ed, I mean, taking Keith's point, what should the C-suite, what should the CEO or president or even a small business owner, what should they be looking to HR to do?
So if HR wants to drive value inside the organization, regardless of size, it has to become proactive. Business owners don't want to hear about problems. They want to hear about the solutions.
Right.
And so when I talk with CEOs and business owners, those that tell me they have really good HR functions tell me that HR comes to them and says, hey, boss, I've identified this problem. Here's where it's coming from. Here's where I think we need to go to solve the problem. I need X amount of dollars to make that happen. Are we good to go? And business owners that have that luxury, and it is a true luxury to have an HR person doing what I think is something relatively simple. They love their HR people, and they don't make moves without them.
Yes.
Conversely, that HR person who acts as pretty much the compliance police, I've had CEOs tell me, I go around my HR function anytime I can because I get tired of being told no. I need a partner to help run my business. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the only reason they're here is I don't want to deal with the hiring and hanging posters. I had that talk with a CEO just the other day. That's his view, that it's a necessary evil and it's a roadblock.
Right.
Obviously, we talked about what it should be then.
Right. So there's obviously a lot of work that needs to be done. And with that, Ed, as the HR strategist, and it sounds you're getting some aha moments and some breakthrough moments with a lot of organizations. Pretty impressive list. Mm-hmm. How can someone who wants to talk to you to get this done in their organization? How can they reach you? What's the best way? Tell the listeners.
So they can find me online at edkrow.com, and that's edkrow.com. Email is real simple. It's ed@edkrow.com. Or they can always give me a shout on Twitter or LinkedIn. They can find me out there as well. And I always welcome having chats with folks who want to get the most out of their HR function, want it to be a strategic contributor, just like every other major piece of the business. Those are my ideal clients, folks that say, I don't like the status quo. It's time to build up my HR function with true professionals that are going to help me get the business to where I want it to go.
Yeah, for sure. Great advice. And like so many of other guests, especially last few weeks, we just barely scratched the surface. So we hope both Keith and I hope you'll join us again sometime. Maybe some hot topics that are surfacing and we need to address them. You've been listening.
Can we, Ed? Can we have you on the show next week, and then the following week, and then the following week?
No. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
I'm
much.
at your disposal.
Yeah, appreciate that. So speaking of the following week on the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show, next week's guest is Rob Kelly. Rob is a co-founder of On Gig, which is a really cool company doing some really neat things with differentiating between a job description and a job posting and a job listing, and with and again, you've heard her mention it, but they are where I go to get a lot of the newest trends. So that'll be exciting. Keith, will you be back in the area next week?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
So far, so good.
Yeah, super. So, well, again, we want to thank everybody for listening to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show, where we bring you topics and thought leaders discussing a future of work where the tired, the wired, and technology converge. Until next Wednesday, and every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY.com, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, a whole bunch of other ones. This is your host, Ira Wolf, co-host Keith Compagna. Our guest today was Ed Krow. Don't let the shift hit your plans.